Hi, Shed Hacks. A couple of subscribers have asked me to explain a little bit more about how the large train is put together. So I'm going to show you here the side view of the design. That's a full-size design there, and you can see the size of it there. Its overall length is about 360 odd millimeters overall length. And the overall height, including the wheels, is 240 roughly. Okay. However, of course, that's the side view. To make it, you are best starting not with the side view. I'll just show you now the full size chassis, or the base of the project, and the overall size of that is 340 roughly millimeters, of course, and 190 millimeters there. Okay, everything's in millimeters. Okay, so there is actually the chassis base. The chassis is the part that holds all the various parts on top, and you can see it's exactly that size. All right, now I'm going to leave that there so you can just see this is the piece that goes in the front that forms the body of the engine. Okay, this is the engine in front here. Okay, with the rebate sticking out there. It's a mortise in the front, similar to a mortise and tenon joint. And then you've got the other parts, as you know, that fit in. Pretty sure it goes this way around. They're dowelled in. Okay, and the side part there. You can see that's the engines. So without the wheels, you can see it coming together. And of course, you've got the sides to the driver's area. That go there, and it's again some sort of lap joint arrangement. Yours doesn't have to have that, but it's nice to have some sort of joint there. Perhaps if you could just show that, Jake, that joint. It's nice to have a joint so you can glue it eventually, or even nail it. And then that's the other side again. Okay, and you can see the sort of housing joint type, lap joint, I think you'd call it. And they're dowelled in, and you can dowel in the front as well. You can see that should fit perfectly, and the curve's been planed very carefully. Now this takes a little bit of time to sort of plane it with a block plane or a tri-plane or a jack plane. But you know, these projects are in effect time looms really in families, and often a project like this could last many years in a house. Now the override at the front, that part there, is just simply moulded and shaped. I've used two handles I've bought. You could turn two of these on the lathe, or just have them perhaps rectangular. And the overrider, like on all trains, it's the buffer on the front there, and that's dowelled in. It can go either way around. And you have overriders for the wheels, and they're made quite carefully actually. That's the right size, and they fit over the wheels to hide the wheels. On a train, you don't see the wheels. The wheels are protected for all sorts of reasons. So they will go there. On a car, you can see the wheels, of course, on a train, on a lorry, but not on a train. And now the wheels, I'm actually going to be on another video probably show you how to make wooden wheels. But I've used these because as it's a project that might be used quite a lot outside, these will probably be the ones that last longer. If it's an indoor toy, you could use a wooden wheel cut out with a hole cutter, and I'll show you that. Again, that's something you're going to have to do with an adult, because cutting holes of that sort of size with a hole cutter is actually quite dangerous. Alright, so that's a bit about how it's designed and made. I'm going to show you now a little bit about the first steps. So what I'll do, I'll just show you a little bit about the rebates. Remove the bits of paper away. Now the rebates here, these housing joints, rebate joints, these, they're not as easy to do as they may look. These joints here, they're not that easy. So I'm going to quickly show you what I suggest you do to start with. Now my son's going to be making a lorry, and you saw in one video him actually making the round fuel part to the lorry where all the fuel goes, and that's a cylinder. You saw him making up the lathe. I'm going to briefly show you how you can start off with the chassis. And again, your design, it's an old bit of wood you can see, your design is entirely up to you. This is just our idea at the moment. Right, so from the front, for the piece that sits there, and you may want it to sit there, so you've got a larger area at the front or right on the end. But if it's too near the end, the piece of wood here, there, may break off. So I'm going to get a tri-square, measure that distance there, about 25 millimeters, transfer it to here, there, and tri-square line. And the reason for the tri-square, you're going to get a really precise right angle to it. Okay, now some people have asked me, how wide is it? Well, do as wide as the piece of wood you've got. Is your wood is narrower than this? Do a housing joint, which is a rebate joint rather, which is narrower. But I've just done it full width because it's easier for my son to do. And I'd centralise it. You know, don't make a big science out of these things. Centralise it. And then you can mark off the width. Okay, I'll probably use a tri-square from the front. If you're going to use a tri-square, of course your timber has to be square, otherwise it'll end up being out of square like that. That front edge and this edge has to be square, and square means that fits precisely like that. If things go wrong quickly, it's usually as a result of marking out or just people not being that precise. Okay, now you can cut that out using a mortise, a bevel edge chisel. That's too wide, but we can do the edges, and a mallet. I'd clamp it down with a G-clamp, which looks like this. Clamp it down. There. Try and do this as fast as I can. And if it's clamped down, you're going to find it's just a lot safer to, you know, the wood isn't moving around. And then you can literally chisel around the edge with the bevel. On the inside, that's the bevel there. Line it up. Hold it firmly. Okay, do the same on this side. Nice, decent blows, don't bash your hand. And you're only going half the depth of the material. In this case, pine wood it is. Okay. I mean, a lot of these woods you use ought to really be sustainable woods, and pine wood is one of the better ones because it's relatively fast growing. But try and avoid any hardwoods, I think, these days. Okay, and then you can turn the bevel over on a smaller chisel, turn it over. Ideally I'd have a slightly bigger chisel, and carefully take it out. If it moves like it just has, tighten up your G-clamp. Now it's so important you just go bit by bit, and if it's not coming out, go around the edge again. If you're going to chisel this way, heaven's sake, move your body, otherwise you'll chisel into yourself. Make sure you've got plenty of room. Now, what I've noticed when I did it with my son, the temptation is to go that way. If you go that way, I can assure you at some point you'll go straight off and take a big chunk out of the front here and it'll break away. So you're going to have to go across the grain. That's me doing without a mallet. And you're going half depth, okay? So eventually you have it deep enough for that to fit in. Okay? Okay, well, I'll come back to you a bit. Right, next step to help those making the large train project. I think I need to mention that you can actually use, to help you as well as the chisel, the bevel edge chisel, you can actually use a drilling technique. You can use a Forstner bit with flat bottom cutter. These are about £5 each, if that. You can get a whole box of about £15. Or you could use these flat cutters. These are more dangerous and you need supervision with these. And the trouble with these, of course, as you go half depth, you might find that the actual end is poking through. So probably best to avoid that type of cutter. But they are effective. The Forstner bits, you put them in the drill, find your centre line. I mean, you do this to start with, I suppose. You could start with this and then chisel. Anti-clockwise, holding the chuck to open the chuck, and then holding the chuck, go clockwise by pushing that button through. So clockwise there, tighten it, and then you can place it on the centre line. And it really is quite effective. And again, have them slightly overlapping so you've got less chiselling. Another one. Okay, and so on. Going slightly over, but it shouldn't matter too much. There you go, and a bit of careful chiselling. That could be another method you could use. And then you can use a chisel and a mallet and just get the worst out. Alright? All the way down. Keeping your hand away from your work, of course. Right, okay, now another question that was asked. Here's the one ready-made, and obviously that's the top part there. The people are asking about the wheels and getting the wheels in the middle. Now, apparently there's been some problems getting the wheels so they line up. So the pieces on the bottom that you use to hold the wheels and the axles. There, the axles. Ooh. Best thing to do is to do it all together. So that's what it should look like when you've done it. Screwed and held down. Actually, there should be like that. Countersunk, 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 and the countersinking bit is this one here. My older drill. All right. So, best thing to do is when you're doing this, and you're drilling these 7.5mm holes for a 6.5mm piece of dowel. This could be metal, of course, and if the train's gonna be bashed around a bit, they may be better if they're metal or bigger diameter, or larger diameter. Drill them basically all together, so the lines, everything lines up, so one fits inside another. That's the way to do it, and if you do that, you can't go wrong. Yeah, you can't go wrong if you drill them together. Actually, it goes that way around, doesn't it? Yeah. So drill them together all the way through. You can drill them that way with a long drill in a vise, or you can simply drill them side by side, making sure you put a tri-square across them to make sure the centre line's exactly the same. Now they can be slightly out by a millimetre, but if they're out more than a millimetre, I'm afraid your lines, your axles, will not work, and the wheels won't line up, and they won't spin properly, and the project will start going wrong. Okay, and you may have to recut things. And of course the wheels go on, they're pushed on. And the wheels are held on with the overriders, the parts of the train. Those parts, they're held on with those. From downward to hold them. Everything's glued on eventually. And this is looking at it from the bottom. Okay, this is looking at it from the bottom. So it's a bit too near the floor at the moment. And you can line it all up, look there. There's some sample wheels, perhaps in your workshop. And then hold these down with some countersunk wood screws. Okay, and they can just be screwed in using a drill like that. Okay, dead easy. Okay, so you'll do that 4 times, of course, for each one. And again, just keep checking that things are going to line up. Okay. Okay. And you can see already it's looking good. So even without those screws, you can see the train's going to work. My son even mentioned about motorising it, putting a motor in it, and I might even do that later in the day. We'll perhaps come back to that. So hopefully that will give you an idea how to get the chassis and the train going a little bit faster than perhaps it has been for you, and it gives you some instruction on how to make the chassis. The chassis is the part, as I say, that makes that allows the train to have a base. So your train, I'll just quickly put it together. Will start looking pretty good fairly soon. I've got to get this right. No, it goes that way around. Okay. That'll go in there. Yeah. Now this part here, the hinge part, is completely optional. I've just done it so you've got a little bit of storage. I think Trojan often like to have a little bit of storage on their trains, make them look nice. And these side parts, I mean, these can be cut out with a coping saw, or it can be cut out again with a force and a bit, with a bit of supervision, obviously slightly larger. And if you can, at all times, refer to your design. If you keep going back to your design, having a good old look at it, it's going to really help, because everything should match up. You know, it's your template, yeah? And the roof parts should fit in neatly, and the overriders should fit in, yeah? What other parts? You know, all the various parts of the engine should fit in. Where's that other part? The front bumpers. It's the front bumper. But what I suggest you do, as you make it, look at what you're doing and try and show that independence in actually working out things on your own. I think a lot of people look at the video and I think they can make it just from the video, but I'm sure you'll be clever enough to sort of work out some of the problems on your own. And as you're so keen in making these sort of things, you'll learn all those new skills as you go through the project. Great little project for youngsters, this. I think you need a little bit of help with somebody who's got the tools. Okay, and we'll come back to you.